The studio went completely silent. Dr. Phil held the sealed white envelope in both hands, staring at it as if it contained something far more dangerous than paper and ink. His jaw tightened. The cameras kept rolling, but everyone in that room knew something had shifted. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't scripted. And when Dr. Phil finally looked up at the young woman sitting across from him, tears already streaming down her face, he said one word that no one expected. No. Not. Let's open it. Not. Are you ready? Just, no. What was inside that envelope? And why did the man who's spent decades confronting the hardest truths on television refuse to break the seal? To understand that moment, we need to go back 3 weeks, to the day a desperate mother walked into the Dr. Phil studio and said 5 words that would change everything. I don't know who I am. Her name was Emily Cartwright. 20 years old. A kindergarten teacher from Ohio. Soft-spoken, kind, the type of person who bakes cookies for her neighbors and volunteers at animal shelters. But behind that gentle exterior was a woman unraveling. She hadn't slept in weeks. She'd lost 15 pounds. And every time she looked in the mirror, she saw a stranger. It started with a family photo. Emily had been cleaning out her late grandmother's attic when she found an old shoebox stuffed with pictures. Most of them were familiar, birthdays, holidays, the usual memories. But then she found one that didn't make sense. A hospital photo. A newborn baby wrapped in a pink blanket, held by a woman Emily had never seen before. On the back, in her grandmother's handwriting, Emily. Day 1. But that wasn't Emily's mother in the photo. Emily's mother, Karen, had passed away from cancer 6 years earlier. And the woman holding that baby? Emily had no idea who she was. When she confronted her father, David Cartwright, a 62-year-old retired construction worker, he went pale. He stammered. He said it was probably a mistake, maybe a hospital mix-up with the photos. But Emily saw it in his eyes. He was lying. Over the next 2 weeks, Emily found more. A birth certificate with a name that didn't match her mother's. Medical records that didn't align. And then, the final piece, a letter, tucked inside an old Bible, written in her grandmother's shaky handwriting. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you deserve the truth. Emily, your mother loved you more than anything in this world. But Karen is not your biological mother. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Emily's world collapsed. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. She couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't look at her father without feeling a rage so deep it scared her. And that's when she reached out to the Dr. Phil show. Not for fame. Not for attention. She reached out because she was drowning, and she didn't know how to save herself. Dr. Phil read her story and knew immediately this was different. This wasn't about addiction or bad behavior or family drama that could be solved with a weekend retreat. This was about identity. About betrayal. About a woman who had spent 20 years believing a lie. The day Emily walked onto that stage, the audience could feel the weight she carried. She sat down in the chair across from Dr. Phil, her hands trembling, her eyes red from crying. And when Dr. Phil asked her to tell him what happened, she broke. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. I don't know where I came from. I don't know if the people I thought were my family are even related to me. And my father, he won't tell me the truth. Dr. Phil leaned forward. Where is your father now? Backstage, Emily said. He didn't want to come. But I told him if he didn't, I'd never speak to him again. Dr. Phil nodded. He turned to the producers. Bring him out. The audience shifted uncomfortably as David Cartwright walked onto the stage. He looked like a man going to his own execution. His shoulders were slumped. His hands were shaking. And when he saw his daughter, the woman he had raised and loved for nearly 3 decades, he couldn't even meet her eyes. Dr. Phil didn't waste time. David, your daughter is sitting here, falling apart, because she doesn't know who she is. And you're the only person who can give her answers. So I'm going to ask you once, and I need you to tell me the truth. Is Emily your biological daughter? David's lips trembled. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Yes, he finally said. She's mine. But Karen wasn't her mother. The silence stretched so long it felt like the air itself had thickened. No, David whispered. Karen wasn't her biological mother. Emily let out a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Dr. Phil held up a hand, steadying her. Then who is? Dr. Phil asked. David closed his eyes. Her name was Rachel. Rachel Bennett. She was someone I knew a long time ago. Someone you knew, Dr. Phil repeated slowly. David, I need you to be clear. Was Rachel your wife? Your girlfriend? Help me understand. She was. David's voice cracked. She was my wife. The audience audibly gasped. Emily's face went white. You were married before? Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. David nodded, tears now streaming down his face. I was young. We got married right out of high school. It didn't last. We weren't good for each other. And then Rachel got pregnant. With you. And then what happened? Dr. Phil's voice was firm, but not unkind. David wiped his eyes. She left. 3 months after you were born, she left. She said she couldn't do it. Couldn't be a mother. She just walked away. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, tears pouring down her cheeks. And Karen? Dr. Phil asked. Karen and I met a year later, David said. She knew about you. She knew about Rachel. And she loved you, Emily. From the moment she met you, she loved you like you were hers. We got married when you were 2. And we decided it would be easier if you just thought Karen was your mother from the start. We thought we were protecting you. Dr. Phil leaned back, processing. So you lied to her for 20 years. David's face crumpled. I didn't know how to tell her. The longer it went, the harder it got. And then Karen got sick, and I couldn't take that away from her. Karen was her mother in every way that mattered. Except biologically, Dr. Phil said quietly. David nodded, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Dr. Phil turned to Emily, who was staring at her father like she didn't recognize him. Emily, I know this is devastating. But I need to ask you something. Do you want to know more about Rachel? Do you want to find her? Emily's voice was hollow. Is she even alive? I don't know, David said. I haven't heard from her in over 20 years. Dr. Phil looked at the producers again. We did some digging before this show. And we found her. The entire studio seemed to inhale at once. She's alive. Dr. Phil continued. She's living in Colorado. And when we reached out to her, she agreed to take a DNA test. To confirm, once and for all, that she is your biological mother. Emily's hands flew to her face. She took the test? Dr. Phil nodded. The results came back this morning. That's when a production assistant walked onto the stage, carrying the white sealed envelope. The same envelope Dr. Phil would hold just minutes later, the one that would stop the entire show in its tracks. Dr. Phil took the envelope. He looked at Emily. Then at David. Then back at the envelope. And that's when everything changed. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stood up. He walked to the edge of the stage, envelope still in hand, and gestured for the cameras to stop rolling. The red recording lights blinked off. The audience murmured in confusion. Dr. Phil turned to Emily. Before we open this, I need to know something. Are you ready for whatever's inside? Because once we know, we can't unknow it. Emily's voice shook. I need to know the truth. Dr. Phil nodded. He looked at David. And you? Are you ready? David's face was ashen, but he nodded. Dr. Phil walked back to his seat. He held the envelope in both hands. And then, slowly, he tore it open. He pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. His eyes scanned the text. And for the first time in decades of television, Dr. Phil's expression shifted into something the audience had never seen before. Shock. Disbelief. And something close to horror. He looked up at David. "You need to tell her the truth. Right now." David's face strained of all color. "What?" "The DNA test," Dr. Phil said, his voice tight. "It's not a match." Emily's breath caught. "What does that mean?" Dr. Phil's eyes bore into David. "It means Rachel Bennett is not Emily's biological mother." The studio erupted. Audience members gasped. Emily grabbed the armrest of her chair like she might fall. David looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "That's impossible," David stammered. She was the only one. I never." "Then you need to think harder," Dr. Phil said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Because this test is definitive. Rachel is not her mother." "So who is?" David's mouth opened and closed. His hands trembled violently. And then, in a voice so quiet the microphones barely picked it up, he said, "Oh my God!" "What?" Emily's voice was frantic. "What does that mean?" David looked at Dr. Phil, his eyes pleading. Can we go off camera? Please?" Dr. Phil stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Producers, kill the audio. Everybody out." The studio cleared. The audience filed out in stunned silence. The cameras stayed on, but the sound cut off completely. And for the next 20 minutes, behind closed doors, David Cartwright told his daughter the truth he had buried for nearly 3 decades. When the cameras turned back on, Emily was still sitting in the chair. But she wasn't crying anymore. She looked different. Like someone who had been broken and hastily put back together, but not quite the same. Dr. Phil sat beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "Emily has asked me not to share the details of what David just told her. And I'm going to respect that. But what I will say is this: the truth is more complicated than anyone in this room could have imagined. And Emily has a long road ahead of her." He looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this and you're holding on to a secret, especially one that affects someone you love, please hear me. The truth always comes out. And when it does, the damage is so much worse than if you'd just been honest from the start." Dr. Phil turned back to Emily. "What do you need right now?" Emily's voice was steady, but fragile. "I need time. I need space. And I need to figure out who I am without all the lies." Dr. Phil nodded. "We've arranged for you to meet with a therapist who specializes in identity and family trauma. You're not going through this alone." Emily's lips trembled, but she managed a small nod. "Thank you." But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Not the DNA results. Something else. He handed it to Emily. "Before we contacted Rachel, she sent this. She asked me to give it to you if you wanted it." Emily took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph. A Polaroid, faded with age. It showed a young woman, no older than 20, holding a newborn baby. The woman was smiling, but her eyes were sad. On the back, in handwriting Emily didn't recognize, were 4 words. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Emily stared at the photo for a long time. Then she looked up at Dr. Phil. "Even though she's not my biological mother, can I still meet her?" Dr. Phil's expression softened. "She's hoping you will." And in that moment, something shifted. Not resolution. Not closure. But the beginning of something. A path forward. The cameras finally stopped rolling. The studio lights dimmed. And as Emily walked off that stage, still clutching the photograph, Dr. Phil stood in the center of the empty set, holding the DNA report that had appended everything. Later, in a private conversation with his producers, Dr. Phil would say it was one of the hardest episodes he'd ever filmed. Not because of the drama, but because of the reminder that some truths don't heal. They just exist. And all we can do is learn to carry them. Share and subscribe, Make sure this story is never forgotten. 3 months later, Emily sent Dr. Phil a letter. She'd met Rachel. The meeting was tense, full of tears and long silences. Rachel had apologized for leaving, though no apology could undo 20 years of absence. Emily didn't forgive her right away. But she listened. And that was a start. As for David, the relationship remained fractured. They spoke occasionally, brief phone calls that felt more like obligations than connection. Emily was working through it in therapy, learning that some wounds don't heal, they just become part of who you are. But Emily was different now. Stronger, in a way she hadn't expected. She'd started painting, something she'd never done before. She said it helped her express things she couldn't put into words. She'd reconnected with old friends. She'd even started dating again, cautiously, taking it slow. And she'd learned that identity isn't just biology or history. It's the choices you make when everything falls apart. It's deciding to keep going even when you don't know who you are anymore. Dr. Phil kept the photograph on his desk. A reminder that sometimes, the most important thing isn't giving answers. It's sitting with someone in the darkness, and reminding them they don't have to face it alone.